Hey guys, today we want to talk all about the best states to live in financially. And if you stick around towards the end, we'll actually do an actual side-by-side comparison of someone moving from California to Texas or vice versa. And it's kind of shocking when you actually break down the math on this and see the big difference between just living in a different state but making the same income. So excited to break it down with you today. But if this is your first time joining us, welcome. My name is Michael Foley. I'm a certified financial planner and student loan professional, and I'm also the son of two doctors, and really passionate about taking care of our healthcare workers and in our society, and developed Lifestyle Creep to really help people be more intentional in their finances through some simple strategies to help them live more humble and quiet lives. So excited to dive into this with you. So thank you for joining. So let's talk about what are the metrics that we need to use to determine what is the best state to live in financially. And so we oftentimes get this question from clients who maybe they've been moved from residency to fellowship and lived in a variety of different places, and maybe they're not tied to any state in particular. Maybe with not their family, they're not trying to be right by their family. They want to make the best financial choice. Two big things that we want to factor in. We want to look at the estimated cost of living for that area or that state that we're living, and then we also want to look at the state income tax. So through the lens of both of those, it makes it a lot more clear to kind of identify which states are best to live in financially. But just because it's the right state to live in financially doesn't mean it's the right state to live in general, right? Oftentimes, it's where your family is or where you enjoy being, and this is just one addition to the pros and cons list, if you will. But definitely something to look at. It's kind of shocking when you actually look at the differences here. So let's start with the cost of living. So the top 5 states that have the lowest cost of living are Mississippi, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, and Alabama. So the South there seems to be pretty pretty strong with cost of living, which is awesome. So if you're living in one of those, you guys have the lowest cost of living in the entire United States. So obviously there's a the whole list of them, but those are the top 5 with the lowest cost of living. Okay. Now, from a tax standpoint, there are a certain amount of states that have actually no state income tax. So it doesn't mean that you don't pay any income tax, right? We always got to be taxed federally from any income that we make, but each state also levies their own tax rate. And so sometimes, I think here in Arizona, it's somewhere around 5% or so, but there's some states that actually don't have any state income tax. And so oftentimes they make up for it in other areas, like potentially their, being a homeowner, you pay property taxes a little bit higher or other things like that. They're going to get their tax revenue somewhere, maybe in sales tax or other ways. But these states that have no income tax can go a really long way. And so this is where we see a lot of our high earners gravitating towards some of these states because as you'll see in our comparison between California and Texas, there's a shocking difference in actually what you'll actually bring home because you get to pay that much less in state tax. So the states that have no income state tax are Alaska, Florida, Nevada, New Hampshire, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Washington, and Wyoming. So those are kind of the golden states that don't have any income tax. And so, let's break down the math of what does that actually mean, and when you're actually comparing, living in some of these different places, it's important to not only look at how much is everything going to cost when you get there, but what is your actual paycheck going to look like? And so there's some great resources to estimate what your paycheck will look like in various states. And so I'll put a link in the show notes here as well, so you can take a look and play around with it. Put your income in and put it in a couple different states, and you'll be able to see the difference in what you would actually be taking home after taxes, which is pretty cool to see. So let's break down a little case study. So let's say someone is moving from Dallas, Texas to San Francisco. Okay. So wanted to look at, we see a lot of clients gravitating towards Texas or maybe gravitating towards California to live with family and stuff like that. And so this might be a good example. So, but let's just make all the numbers easy. So let's say in both situations, you'd be making $200,000 a year. Okay, so in Dallas, Texas, you're a physician, you're making $200,000. In San Francisco, you're a physician making $200,000. Okay. So let's start with the cost of living. So the cost of living in San Francisco is over 66% higher than it is in Dallas, Texas. So right out the gate, if you were to take your $200,000 while you're living in Dallas and move over to San Francisco, it would be the equivalent to you taking an $80,000 haircut on what your income would be in Dallas. So it would be the equivalent to you making about $119,000 in Dallas. So whatever you would be able to buy with $119,000 in Dallas, that's kind of what it's going to feel like when you're in San Francisco, okay? But then we got to remember that there's also no income tax in Texas, no state income tax in Texas, and so and there's a very hefty state income tax in California. And so when we factor in the state income tax, in Dallas, of that $200,000, just assuming you're a married couple and we're not saving, not contributing anything to retirement plans or things like that, just to compare apples to apples, just your raw income would be coming in at $13,221 per month. That's how much would be hitting your paycheck after taxes in Dallas. Now, if in California, because of the additional taxes, that same $200,000 of income would be hitting your bank account at $11,829. So it's like adding insult to injury here, because you're making almost $1,400 per month less because of taxes, and you're having a higher cost of living in that. So not only are we taking effectively like an $80,000 haircut in what we can actually buy by moving to California, but then we're actually taking another, what is that, almost $17,000 a year in just actual money that's coming into your situation, because we're now going to pick up an additional tax. So it's kind of jarring to see that, you have to make a substantial amount more, in a place when you move to California as opposed to a place like Texas. And so as you're really being intentional in your finances, and maybe you are living in California right now and feeling that, right? It gets a little demoralizing when you look at that pay stub, right? And you see how much is going out in taxes. But that's something that, potentially, if that's an option, moving to a state that maybe has a little bit better cost of living and maybe has, no or lower state income tax, just by you making the same salary, you could be, yielding a lot more results for your family from an actual, money in your pocket and what you'd actually be able to afford and take care of. So sometimes the answer is not necessarily more money, but also, maybe it's less time. Maybe you could work part-time in a place like Texas and, earn a comparable, living to what you had in California, but maybe have more time with your family, right? So this is what it's all about. It's all about being intentional with your finances, but sometimes we got to break down the math to really reveal some of the differences between this. So hopefully this is helpful to kind of see the stark differences just by living in different states, how this can really change how much you get to use and play around within your finances. So thanks again for joining. We'll see you in the next episode.